In all likelihood, America is now a post-Christian nation.
So what do? How does this gospel message get out?
Good morning. It's so great to see you all here this morning on a great day, and happy Veterans Day again. You guys are awesome. We celebrate veterans in this community and in this church. So thank you so much for your service. I also know that today, Veterans Day, is a hard day for a lot of veterans too. And so for those veterans, we also want to just say that we see you and know what you've been going through, and come and talk to me. So come and talk. Beyond that, though, I'm excited for today. I'm excited not just on the message today. I've been excited all week. How many of you guys have already started listening to Christmas music? No? So I'm the weird one? I've been listening to Christmas music, planning out all the Christmas stuff that's going to be coming next month, and I'm getting pumped up. I'm getting excited for what we're about to do in December, and I'm getting excited for what it is, and here's why. Here's why I'm so excited about it. See, in December, we're going to be doing some stuff that's a little bit different. We're going to be a little bit different in our church, and it's going to be super fun and exciting. But where this comes from is it's actually coming from a lot of people in our community, and a lot of our friends, and I'm sure people have heard this. You have all heard this at some point. If you have friends outside of church, you've probably heard this, where there's a lot of people in the community that say, I can't come to church because I don't believe in the church. I don't believe in the division. They feel like churches are divided. They feel like communities divided. They also struggle with Christians, right? Have you ever heard that too? Like, I love Jesus. I don't love Christians. Maybe have you ever heard that one before? I've heard it a lot this week. This week, as I've been talking to public and I've been talking to people and different pastors, we've been hearing that over and over again. And here's what I hear, though. When I hear that, there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, look, I may not like Christians right now, or I'm really, really struggling with this. And I think part of that is, yes, that we have some problems there. And church has some problems and different things in our society. But when I hear this, and I've been talking to a lot of people in the last couple of weeks, what I'm also hearing from people is they don't have a problem with Jesus. That they don't have a problem with Jesus. That they would actually love Jesus. But right now they're having a problem with community. They're having a problem with church. They're having a problem with some Christians, or they're having a problem with actually their image and what they think of all of that. That's really what it comes down to. They're having a problem with the image. And what I've been discovering is, as I've been going through this, is it's not necessarily a problem just with Christians or church or anything like that. What it is it's at its core, it's a problem of community. It's a problem where the church model that we do every Sunday, it's pretty easy to get lost in. It's pretty easy to not have an authentic community. It's pretty easy to just go, hear a message, go home, never be seen, right? And it's easy for us to not have community in that. Well, we want to change. We want to change that. Throughout December, what we're going to be doing is every single Sunday is Breakfast Sunday. Every single Sunday, we're going to be doing breakfast. And it's not just going to be like regular breakfast. It's Christmas breakfast. It's Christmas morning every single Sunday in December. And in fact, every single table is going to have gifts on it for everybody at the table. They're going to have a surprise that's going to happen. So you have to show up on Sundays to figure out what it is. But every Sunday, it's going to be Breakfast Sunday, and it's going to be all about community, building an authentic community together, sharing lives with each other, working together, being together, and bringing in the community for it. And instead of starting at like 9:45 or 10 or anything like that, what we're going to do is we're going to start at 9:30. There's a whole bunch of other people. Yeah, other people are like, oh, you lost me there early. No, we're starting at 9:30. And here's why we're starting at 9:30. So that way there's a half an hour of eating together. There's a half an hour at least of eating together, getting to know each other. There's going to be challenges and things and questions on the tables for you to ask and get to know people around us. Because here's what we've been seeing is that right now, there's a whole lot of people that just don't know each other. And I think when the community is out there and they're saying, look, I'm struggling with church, or I'm struggling with Jesus, they're not struggling with Jesus. What they're struggling with is they don't know the community. They don't know the community, and they need to come in to know the community. So we want to provide that space, and we want to say, okay, we're going to do something different throughout December, and we're going to be very community-centric. Breakfast churches every single Sunday. Amazing breakfast churches. We're going to do different things every Sunday, and it's going to be fun. I'm excited for it. I'm pumped up for it. Can you tell? I'm pumped. And I'm pumped up because here's what I think. I think that our church needs this. I think our community needs this, but I also think that our community outside of us needs this. Needs it in a big way. Because right now in our community, it feels more divided than ever. How many of you have had that inkling? How many of you have said that? Even in this last week, because nothing divisive happened at all this last week. Even in this last week, how many of you have said that when you looked at the news, you looked at people, you looked at society, you looked at everything around us and you said, it's more divided than it's ever been. This is the worst time in history. I hear that all the time. People telling me this is the worst time in history. So many people are saying Jesus must be coming back tomorrow because it's getting crazy. It happens, right? We feel like it's so divided. And right now our community is very divided. Our community is struggling. They're very polarized. And people are struggling and they're dividing against each other. And there's all these different things that you're finding that it's pulling people apart. And it's also, here's what happens when the community gets divided like that. There's two things that happen. One, you either segregate yourself, you silo yourself into groups that already agree with you, and so you tend to divide more. Or a lot of people are doing this in our community, where they just withdraw their whole lives away from any community. There's a whole lot of people that won't come into church, that won't go to clubs, they won't go and meet communities, they won't have friends. They'll have online friends, but they won't have friends outside of anything. And it's creating more division and more loneliness. The U.S. State Department actually said that we're right now in an epidemic of loneliness. That it's a loneliness epidemic here in America. And right now, even in Port Orchard, as I'm speaking this, in Port Orchard and in South Kitsap, there's record high numbers of depression, anxiety, suicide attempts, and difficulty. It feels like the world's more divided than ever. So what do we do about that? When the world is divided, when there's so much divide and everything is polarized and everything is divisive and everything is, it feels like it's going crazy. The whole world feels like it's going crazy. What do we do about that? Is it actually going crazy? Is it the worst time that's ever been? Or what can we do to help it, to stop it? What can we actually do to stop it in our own lives, to get over our own loneliness, our own difficulties, our own divisiveness and struggle? Well, luckily, in Acts chapter 14, when we follow the examples of Paul and Barnabas, we get some pretty great wisdom on what to do about this. And we get some pretty great wisdom about what the world was like and what it is like today. So today we're going to be going through and following Paul and Barnabas and their missionary journey. Let's go ahead and let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being with us. We thank you so much for this time and this day. We pray, Jesus, that you would bless your word to our hearts and minds, that you would help us to experience you. We love you and we thank you, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Well, now, in order to get to really tell this story, so anytime, if you're new here, anytime that we go through anything in the Bible, we always want to go through it in its historical and cultural perspective, right? We really want to delve in, because here's what you find. When you go through the historical and cultural perspective, when you get into the history, you find out that the verses mean so much more. Like all of a sudden, it means so much more. And you're going to find that out with these verses today. We're only going to talk about the first part of chapter 14 in Acts because it's so rich with culture and history. You're going to find out when you know it, it changes it. It makes so much more sense. But right now, we also want to talk about, okay, exactly what's happening. So what's happening in Acts is you have Paul and Barnabas. If you didn't know, they're apostles. So they're apostles of Jesus. They're going out there and they're telling people about Jesus. They're telling people who Jesus is. They're giving people a message of Jesus. They're going from town to town. They're missionaries. And they're going all over the place and they're talking about who Jesus is, especially to the Jewish people and to the Greek people and Gentiles. They're basically equal opportunity. They're saying, we're going to talk to everybody about Jesus, because everybody should know about him. So they're going out. And what we find out is here comes Paul and Barnabas, and they go into a city called Iconium. Iconium. And in Iconium, it's actually this Greek city. So it's this Greek-Roman city that's there. And it's kind of a wealthy city. It's a wealthy place. It's not as wealthy as the coastal regions, but it's a big booming city. And it's run by a Gentile group that's actually a cult. But in this city, there's a good mix of people. There's a mix of people that are Jews. There's a mix of people that are mostly actually Greek Jews, meaning they weren't born Jewish, but they came into Judaism. And then there's a mix of people that are within this cult and the Gentiles that are there. There's a mix of tons of people there. And Paul and Barnabas, they go to Iconium and they make their first stop. It tells us right here in Acts 14, 1-6. At Iconium, Paul and Barnabas went as usual into the Jewish synagogue. There they spoke so effectively that a great number of Jews and Greeks believed. I love that line right there, a great number of Jews and Greeks believed, because that means that they had both Jewish people and Greeks that were there, meaning Gentile people. When it refers to Greeks there, it means Gentiles, meaning in order for the Gentiles to come, that means they had to have an open invitation. There was an open invitation there at the synagogue, which oftentimes didn't allow a mixture of Gentile and Greek and people in there. It was mostly just for Jewish, but it means that they had opened it up. That now you could have Jew and Gentile together for this one event to come here, which tells me that the Jewish people that wanted to come hear Paul and Barnabas, they invited their neighbors, they invited their friends, they invited the Gentiles, they invited the people that were around them. So when I tell you on Sunday to invite your friends, it's just biblical, people. It's biblical. That's exactly what it says. But here they are. They're talking to the Jews and to the Gentiles. And a great number of them start to come to believe and get excited about Jesus. But this is where the conflict starts. Now, it says this, but the Jews who refused to believe stirred up the other Gentiles and poisoned their minds against their brothers. Think about this. It's not just that the Jewish people that didn't want to believe, that were refusing it. It's not just that they were poisoning the mind of their fellow Jewish people. They were going around to the Gentiles, to people that were far away from them, to people that they didn't agree with, and they were poisoning the minds against their own brothers. They were stirring up conflict. Here is the very people that should know God and know God's love and mercy and grace, who shouldn't be spewing hate and divisiveness, yet here they are, and they're poisoning the rest of the world against their brothers. They're connecting with people that they were already divided against, and they're creating more division. That's sad. That's horrible. And it gets worse. It says here, so Paul and Barnabas spent considerable time there. I love that line right there because they spent considerable time, even though their minds were being poisoned against them, even though you had people speaking against them. Paul and Barnabas are like, challenge accepted. We're going to continue on doing exactly what God's calling us to do. And they spent considerable time there. It doesn't say they just spent a little time and then they said, let's go. No, they spent a long time there. And then they were speaking boldly for the Lord, who confirmed the message of grace by enabling them to perform signs and wonders. They said, challenge accepted. Let's do this. You're not going to scare us. But the people of the city, it says, were divided. Iconium was a city that was known for its divisiveness. It was a city that was constantly divided. And it tells us that it was divided even in this. The people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, others sided with the apostles. There was a plot afoot amongst the Jews and the Gentiles, working together with their leaders to mistreat them and stone them. Not only are they speaking and poisoning the minds of people that they don't even get along with, that they're divided against, but not only are they now just poisoning the minds against these Christians, but now they're coming up with a plot together to stone them and mistreat them. They're secretly plotting. Does that sound like they know God very well? No. That's sad. That's horrible. They're there trying right now to continue to divide. And they're uniting with a group of people they wouldn't have gotten along with. The Bible tells us from this, before they could stone Paul and Barnabas, they had to leave. See, stoning in that day, it wasn't like you got stoned like Washington stoned, okay? No, it was rock stone. That's a joke that only works here. But it's only rocks, like it's rocks, and they would throw rocks until you're dead. Like they could kill you. And here's the thing, is this group of people didn't have the authority to stone anyone. They didn't have the authority from the Roman Empire to actually stone anyone. So they were willing to actually get everybody in the city, Jew and Gentile alike, to cast the stones, to try to stone them. They needed to get everybody in cooperation to do that, so that way they wouldn't get punished by the Roman Empire. See, if the Romans came and said, you Jewish people, you guys stone somebody, you're not allowed to do that, they get in trouble. But now if you get the rest of the cults and the rest of the Gentiles and all of the people together against this one group, Rome can't do very much. They can say, bad job, here's a smack with a ruler, but that's it, nobody gets killed. So now they're evilly plotting against the Christians, plotting against Paul and Barnabas. And the Bible tells us that Paul and Barnabas, from that, they had to leave. They had to go off into other places. And it tells us in the next verse that they went to a couple of different cities that were a little easier for them to go to. It was Paul and Barnabas taking a little break, taking a little refresher, taking a little bit, okay, let's go and let's have some ease before they went into more challenging cities again. Because Paul and Barnabas never, ever shied away from conflict. They continued to go to difficult cities and hard cities where they would be beaten, where they would be jailed, where they would have difficulty. It's crazy. But here is this plot in Iconium. And what I really find is fascinating, like the text right here, the text sounds bad enough, right? It's bad enough. It's worse when you know the history and context and culture. It's worse when you know what was really happening. So today, if you're a history fan, we're going to get into a little history because you have to know what was going on in Iconium. Iconium was always a city that was divided. It was a difficult city. It was a difficult city, and it was run by a cult organization that was called the Galli. Now, the Galli, they were Phrygian. Okay, these are words that you probably won't remember. That's okay. But they spoke a different dialect. And they were a cult, a Roman cult that was there in the city. And a good portion of those Gentiles were of this cult. The Galli were actually a cult that they worshiped the goddess Sybil. Sybil was known to be the mother of gods. And so they had this affinity. They had this thing where they wanted to worship the mother of all gods. But this was the only place in the Roman Empire that they actually had this cult with a power struggle. Like the cult actually ran the city. The cult ran a lot of the city. And this was the only place that happened in the Roman Empire. Why? Because the Romans thought they were weird. They were weird, and it was hard for them because the Galli, the main leaders, were male that during ceremonies castrated themselves. That was the top leaders. The top leaders would castrate themselves, and then they would wear women's clothes and put on jewelry and a lot of other things. So they were considered to be very feminine. Very feminine. And the Roman Empire would be accepting of that, and they were okay with that, but they couldn't make heads or tails of what was happening. And some of the other leaders that were below them, they didn't go as far as castrating themselves, but they would still wear women's clothing, or they would still go to the other side. So you can imagine like people in dresses with beards. People in Rome, though, said that they were confused because it was like they were trying to create a third gender. So, just want to remind you, we're talking about Rome, not today. But here's the thing. Over and over again throughout history repeats itself. History continues to repeat itself over and over and over again. There is nothing new underneath the sun. There's nothing new. There's new ways to do old things, but there's nothing new underneath the sun. And this was actually a divided culture in that time because you had Gentiles who were of this cult, and you had a lot of the cult that was running the city, but then you also had the Jewish people that were there and intermixing, but they didn't get along. And here's the thing. The Jewish people really, really did not like the Galli. They did not like the cults. They were so divided against them. They hated them. They were so divided against them. Yet the Bible is telling us they were willing to hate Christians more, their own brothers more, in order to join forces with people they didn't get along with, didn't agree with, were divided against. They were willing to actually join forces with people that they were divided against in order to create chaos for the evil they thought was worse. Again, that sounds a lot like today, doesn't it? There's a lot of dividedness, a lot of divisiveness. People are very divided in today, and it's just like it was back then. Back then, they were so divided. And in fact, that divisiveness, the divisiveness in Iconium, it didn't stop just with that. It didn't stop when the Christians had left. Actually, that city was known to be very divided throughout most of history. They continually were divided. In fact, after the Christians had left, a little bit longer after that, all of a sudden you had the Jews that were being kicked out and that were ostracized. And then you had the Galli that were ostracized. And then they were kicked out. And then you all of a sudden actually had Christians coming into Iconium. And so there is a history of that city becoming a Christian place, a Christian city. In fact, there was a famous bishop that was there. There was a whole bunch of leadership that was there until all of a sudden the church decided to divide against itself and argue against itself when they had all these popes and problems that was happening. It used to be you had 3 popes. There was all kinds of things going on. And then the city started to divide again. And it went into the hands of another group. Then they got divided, and then the Christians came back in, and then they got divided, and over again until finally the city fell, and everybody was like, that's it. It's too divided, it cannot stand. And that's what happens with divisiveness. With being divided, with constantly being divided about everything, that's what happens. This dividedness brings downfall. It brings downfall, brings hurt, pain, loneliness, depression, and the downfall of people, families, cities, empires, even nations. Dividedness has a capacity to do that. So what do we do in our culture that right now feels like it's so divided? Because right now there's a whole lot of people that say, look, we are the most divided. We are the most divided we have ever been in our lives. Like everywhere is so divided. And here's the thing. I've been doing a ton of research on this and a ton of research. Like, why are we so divided? What is it that's actually dividing people? Like, what is it? And I found out in all of this research, it's not just America that feels very divided, that's very, very polarized. Right now, it's almost every civilized nation is experiencing the same dividedness. And it's been happening for the last 15 years. If you were to go to England, France, Spain, if you were to go to even Canada, right now they're very polarized and divided, and they're so nice there. But here's the thing, they're divided. There's so much division that's happening everywhere. It's not just a US thing. It's not just our culture thing. It's all around the world thing. So what's happening? What's happening that's creating this? In the last 15 years, 10, 15 years, some of the answers I came up with surprised me. Because here's the thing, I started looking at it, I'm like, okay, maybe it's like spiritual warfare. And spiritual warfare, that's a thing. As a pastor, I will tell you guys, I used to be one of those guys that was like, I don't know if that's really a thing. Man, I have seen some things. Spiritual warfare is a thing. We're going to talk about it next year. We're going to talk about it in the next year, and New Year's coming up, because it is a really big thing. It's something that is actually happening. But is it just spiritual warfare that's causing all this? No, I don't think it is. Is it just people groups? Is it just people that are dividing against each other? Is it just that? I don't think it's just people. What is it? Is it just politics that are dividing? No, I don't think that's the answer either. What is it exactly that's dividing people? I think it's a little bit of all of those things, but it's also combined with something else that came out about 10 to 12 years ago. And this one will surprise you. AI. Go with me here. Because a lot of you, when I said that, you're like, AI, okay, Jeremy's a conspiracy theorist. No, I've been reading a ton of science books. I've been reading a lot of psychological books and books that are very much trying to figure out what is it that's creating division within the world, because this is a known world problem right now. So what is one of the things that's dividing? It's AI. AI, believe it or not, is not something brand new. It's not something that just came out in the last couple of years. It's come out for the basic user, for any of us to go ahead and use stuff, but it's been used for a long time. It's just programming. It's just code. It's computer code that's out there. But AI has actually been used for a long time, especially in social media. And here's what ended up happening. When programmers, they needed to figure out a way, how can they get you to want to spend more time on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on all of the different social media programs? Google was trying to figure out, how can they get you to spend more time online, because that's where they make their money. So spend more time online. How can they get you to spend more time online, have personalized ads, have all of these things that you're spending and clicking on, and they want you to click on things. They want to send you things that you're going to have to click on. Same thing with social media. So what programmers did was they wrote AI code, and they wrote this ever-evolving code that made it so that way the things that you like, it would give you more of that. So now all you see is when you like something and you look for something, it continues sending more things to you that's of that same perspective. Never sends you stuff in the middle. It's all just what you're looking for, right? Except for the last few years. Last few years, AI figured out something different. Actually, last many years, probably 5 or 6. It figured out that if it only ever sends you things that you like, then you'll get bored. But if it sends you things that you like and also things that you hate, you'll interact with it. Because hate is a way more powerful emotion than just like. And so what it does is it actually tries to evolve, and it says, okay, it wants to send you things not only that you're going to like and that you're going to be able to follow, but also things and people that you might like, but they say things that are controversial, that you don't like, or things that you're going to comment. Because here's what they know is when you send some of those things, you're going to hit the little down face or the little thumbs down or the little frowny face or the little puke emoji or whatever, or somebody's going to write a comment, and there's tons of people writing comments online, and they're going to write a comment. But all of that counts as an interaction, meaning you spent more time on social media or online or on these media devices because you're interacting with it. But then AI also figured out, just like in Iconium, where you had groups of people that were divided, that did not like each other, that were definitely against each other, yet they were against something else even more. Well, AI also figured out the same thing. If it connects groups of hate and divided groups that were divided, but they have a commonality of something that they hate, and they mix those together, you get a more powerful emotion. You get more powerful interactions, more comments, more likes, more dislikes, more all of those things. So now what it comes down to is when you go online, you're not seeing anything in the middle. You see things on the very, very polarizing spectrums, anything that you already like and agree with, and the things that you don't like. But it feels like we are completely divided. Like everyone is against each other. Everyone is divided because the only things you're seeing is all of the divisiveness, all of the things that it puts in your feed. Not only that, you also have news media that also figured all of this out, that hate is a bigger emotion, that drama is a bigger emotion to get you to watch longer, to get you to use it longer. So now news media also follows a format. I would always tell you guys too, that I don't really actually believe that a ton of these newscasters believe every opinion they put out there. But it's, you get views, you get clicks. And that's throughout the whole world. So when we figured out all of this emotion stuff, the world feels like it's so divided, like everyone is against each other. But it's really probably not that divided. It's just you're not figuring out where the middle is because it's being hidden. The middle just isn't there. Now we have the polarized sides, just like in Iconium. Just like in all these cities back in the day. I told you guys, there's nothing new underneath the sun. There's just new ways of doing the same old things over and over and over again. So what do we do about it? What do we do about James Cameron's Terminator coming for us? Probably not going to end up like that. What do we do about all this stuff? How can we actually bring a world that is so divided against each other and everything that you look at trying to undivide us and all of the stuff, all the world is saying, we love you, we love you, we love you. Everything in the world says we love you while also spewing hate at the same time. How do we actually change the perspective? How do you change the conversation? How do we actually go from a place where everybody is so divided to become more united? to become more united and to find those commonalities and to find those communities, to find those things where now we can actually have a world that's more concerned with peace and love. How do we do that? Well, there's a lot of wisdom that we find throughout the Bible. I'm going to give you these 3 things, big 3 things that you can do. Number 1, I'm pretty sure you guys have already guessed of what I'm going to say, number 1. Number 1 is trust in Jesus. Trust in Jesus. Trust in Jesus. That's a huge thing. You can trust in Jesus. Now, a lot of you guys are saying, okay, look, you're supposed to say that. You're a pastor. Of course, that's your number 1. Yes, but even if I wasn't a pastor, I would tell you that's still the number 1. Even if I wasn't a pastor, I would be telling you guys, trust in Jesus should always just be your number 1. Because here's what Jesus tells us. Jesus in John 14:27, he says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give as the world gives, so do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Peace I give to you, peace I leave with you. Jesus is the way to peace. He does not give as the world gives. The world constantly will say, I love you, I love you, I love you, while also spewing hate and doing the wrong things. AI will even tell you I love you while also spewing the same things. In fact, this week I decided I was going to play with AI. I wanted to figure out some stuff. I've been making funny memes. It's been great. But now all of a sudden I decided to go onto an AI editor, and I just decided to ask a whole bunch of questions, and it gave me a whole bunch of answers. And then at the end of it, I said, I wonder what it tells me if I say this. So I said, Google AI, I love you. And Google AI said, I love you too, Jeremy. It lied. It lied. I know it doesn't love me. I know it doesn't love back. It can't love. It can't love. But it's willing to lie to you. But Jesus isn't. Jesus doesn't lie. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. Jesus is the way. Jesus is the only way. And with him, you have peace. You have love. You have mercy. So trust in Jesus. He doesn't give as the world gives. No, it's different. He gives peace. We have to rely on Jesus, get to know Jesus, rely on him, trust him, and allow his peace to be in our hearts and our minds, especially when things feel divided within us and our culture. Jesus is the answer. It was the answer back then. Paul and Barnabas, they knew it. They knew that was the answer. They knew that was the answer. They knew it was Jesus. It's the only way. So now the number 2 thing that we need to do. Number 2 is do what Paul and Barnabas did. Do what Paul and Barnabas did. Here's the thing with Paul and Barnabas, they were there. They were there, and they were in the trenches, and they were hurt, and they were going through all kinds of stuff. People were poisoning the well against them. They were poisoning the mines. Yet what did Paul and Barnabas do? They didn't go there and start ostracizing everyone. There's nowhere in this passages where it tells them that they all of a sudden stood up and said, you're all wrong, you're all evil, you're all going to hell. Like, they weren't doing that. What did they do? They just concentrated on Jesus. They focused in on Jesus. The whole world was against them. Dividedness everywhere, divisiveness everywhere. And what they did was they focused on Jesus. They said, well, we're still going to teach you Jesus. Why did they do that? Because they also knew this. They knew the world was already going to be divided, and they're not supposed to be of the world. They know the world does what the world does. They know outside of this does what it does. You can't blame it. You can't put blame on that because that's just what the world will do. But no, Paul and Barnabas were like, but we're not supposed to be of the world. Instead, we're supposed to be loving. And we're supposed to love like Jesus loved. That we're supposed to love like Jesus loved. So they concentrated on that. But it always fascinates me. It always fascinates me. Why was Paul and Barnabas able to do that? Why were they able to actually love in the midst of hardship? I will tell you this. If we were to go out into society right now, we go out into the streets and all of a sudden there's a big mob of people that are coming up to you and saying, we're going to stone you. I would think that probably a lot of us would probably be like, all right, I'm out, I'm done, I'm going to stop. Why did Paul and Barnabas say, game on? Why were they able to actually do this and continue on? And here's why. It's because they were together. They were a community. They had community. They had people in their lives that were encouraging them. And they never went out alone. They were continually going out together. From city to city to city, from place to place to place, from hardship to hardship, from all the difficulties in life, they didn't go through it alone. They did it together. It helped to encourage them, helped to embolden them. It helped to make them go, we want to do this together. They had community. There's a reason why Jesus told everybody to not go out alone. While Jesus sent people out 2 by 2. It's in Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. 2 people are better than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls, the other can reach out and help. But someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Likewise, 2 people lying close together can keep each other warm. But how can one be warm alone? A person standing alone could be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back and conquer. 3 are better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. It's talking about community. You need a community to be able to stand. You need a community of faith, and you need people in your lives to help encourage you and guide you and steer away from divisiveness. I hear it all the time. I don't need people. I don't need community. I don't need people around me in faith. All I need is Jesus, and I need the Bible, but I don't need church, and I don't need people. Wrong. You do. Because here's the thing. If you're trying to go it alone, if you're trying to be alone in faith and you're trying to walk this faith thing alone, you will fail. Over and over, you will fail again and again. Because it's not made for us to do alone. It's made for us to be together, to encourage each other, to have a community around us, to say, I'm going to take away all that loneliness. I'm going to take away all of that divisiveness. No. We're going to do this thing together. As Christians, as believers, as family, as brothers and sisters in Jesus who love each other. That's what Paul and Barnabas were doing. They went out together. And even when they went into the communities, they were together. And they found more communities and they spent time in those communities. We have to have community. It's essential. It's essential. So do what Paul and Barnabas did. Number 3 is this. Don't be a pawn in division. Don't be a pawn in the division game. Don't be pawns in it. When all of a sudden the whole world and everybody around you feels so divisive, we have an instinct where we want to be divisive back. There's that instinct where all of a sudden you want to divide. But no, Paul and Barnabas didn't do that. They didn't go out there and start creating more division. Instead, they kept it on message. We're going to talk about Jesus. We're going to talk about who Jesus is. We're going to talk about peace, and we're going to talk about love. The hardest thing about being a Christian is what Jesus asked us to do. Jesus told us to love your enemies as you love yourself. That's the hardest thing to do as a Christian. It is so hard to love people that would hate you, to love people that would spit at you, that would stone you, that would hurt you, that would conspire against you. It is so hard to do that. It's hard, but that's what Jesus calls us to do. We can't do it alone, just like Paul and Barnabas. They didn't do it alone. We have to choose to do it together in a community, loving each other, but then also loving the people around us, loving the people of the world, recognizing that, yes, there is going to be hurt, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be problems. Thank God we don't stone people anymore. But there will be hurt, there will be challenges. The modern day stoning is a flogging on Facebook where everybody comments on everything you post. But I would tell you, today, there's going to be pain, there's going to be hurt. You can't do it without community. But Jesus calls us to do it with love. To not be pawns in division and create more division. To not go out there and then divide people even more. But to go out there and say, I'm going to love you through this, and let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about the main thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. It's Jesus. Be a bishop in peace, not a pawn in division. Good chess reference, okay, just for anybody who did get that. So today as we conclude and the band comes up, today it feels like things are really divided, that there's divides everywhere we go. But I don't think that the whole world is actually as divided as we think it is. The more and more I talk to people, especially even in this week, the more and more I talk to people and I get to know people and I get to know their struggles and what they're going through and all of this, they also feel the same thing. Even people that aren't Christians, they feel like the world is divided too. Everybody right now feels like this is the most divided we've ever been, even though it's not. History repeats itself over and over and over again. Now we just have history repeating itself on steroids because we have the internet, we have social media, we have 24-hour news cycle. You're constantly bombarded with things that you like and things that you hate, but you never find the middle. The middle isn't what gets publicized. But most people are actually right there. Not even just politically, but also just in general, like in thoughts. Like most people that I talk to and they say, I'm not going to come to church because they have a bad impression of church. But when I talk to them about Jesus, they don't hate Jesus. They're saying, actually, that sounds great. I would love to actually talk about Jesus. They just don't know the community. It isn't so divided and polarized. People in general are not as polarized. There is the extremes. There is the extremes, and the extremes are what comes out there more and more and more. But most people aren't as divided as you might think. Most people unite, but they also can unite over one emotion, one thing that is bigger than hate, that is bigger than all of the stuff that all the division tries to connect us with. It's with peace and love. It's with mercy. And it's with Jesus. Jesus is the way to unite. Jesus is the way, the truth, the light. Jesus is the way for each and every one of us. That's the way the world becomes more united. That's the way all of this division goes away, by focusing on Jesus. So we need to focus in on Jesus. Focus in on unity, on love. Let Jesus change our hearts into peace, and let Jesus and be praying to him and talking to people together. You don't walk in faith alone, but be together and talking to people about Jesus. Love and light and loving people well. That's the way division ceases. That's the way we get past a divided society. It's with Jesus. So today, before I go, I'm going to give you guys a challenge. For a few of you, this will hurt. For others, you're like, I'm already there. But this week, for this week alone, I will tell you, I want you guys to do a challenge. The challenge is this. I want you to love people. I want you to love like Jesus. And I want you to do it in a way of taking a fast away from social media this week. Don't go on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Get off of socials just for a week. I know for some people they're like, I can't do it. You can do it. Just 1 week. All that stuff will be back next week. But take a fast from that, and take a fast from the news. A lot of people, they watch the news all day long. And if you're only watching the news all day long, all you're feeling is controversy and hate and discontent and difficulty because it's just constant bombardment. Take a break this week. Unplug. Get off of all of the stuff that's trying to divide and say, you know what? This week, instead of social media and news, I'm going to focus in on my family. I'm going to focus in on Jesus. I'm going to focus in on reading the Bible. I'm going to focus in on spending that time that I would have spent on socials or on news and spending it with God in prayer, or going for a walk in the rain or something. You might just find that next week, by taking a week off, you might just find a different perspective. That the world is a little more loving and peaceful than you thought when you know Jesus. And when Jesus is in your heart. So this week, take a break from all of the noise and focus in on Jesus and his peace, his love, his mercy for you in the world.